Welcome back to the Larry Hembree pregame show. On our Where Are They Now segment, I'm talking with Rex Sager, 1970 graduate with the Loogootee Lions, talking to him in his home in Greenwood, Indiana. Rex, how are you this evening?
Pretty good, Larry. I really appreciate the call.
Okay, Rex. Hey, listen, you played on that state championship in 1970. Actually, it was the first team in Loogootee history that won a regional, and of course on the semi-state and in the state finals. Who were some of the guys you played with and some of your coaches at that time?
Well, obviously the coach was Jack Butcher, and Tim Nante was our assistant at that time. David Lett, our student manager, was also considered, as far as I'm concerned, one of our coaches. He's the one that kept us out of trouble, and he was assisted by John Olson. But I played with Jim Trout, Brian Canada, Tony Smith, Paul Bruner, Tony Walton, and Rich Arvin, and that was a great bunch of guys to finish my career there with.
Now, that's a fairly colorful bunch of guys that you may have played basketball with there. What do you recall from some of your days playing with some of your teammates and your coaches?
Well, I started playing as a freshman, or at least I was on the team as a freshman, and started beginning my sophomore year. And anybody who knows me will wonder why I haven't mentioned this guy's name already, and that's Pat Pankey. He talk about a colorful guy. He kept my whole body colored black and blue, as a matter of fact. He's the one that taught me the ropes there at Loogootee in terms of playing center for Jack Butcher. But he did teach me a lot, along with Steve Brett and Kenny Fry, my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, I played with Rex Strawn, Jim Nigg, Roger Wildman, and several other guys. And that's the year that people may remember that I had an accident in shop class and severely cut my thumb. Missed about 10 games that year, but we had a pretty good season even with that. The next year I played as a junior with Cecil Truelove, Joe Lekumsky, Chuck Devine, and others. That was the year Jack Butcher used a 3-out, 2-under slowdown offense. I believe that year we led the state in defensive average, basically because we didn't shoot the ball very often. The thing I remember most about that, by the way, is I almost hated to be passed the ball, because I'll tell you one thing, Jack did not like it whatsoever if you made an error with the basketball in that slow-down offense.
Well, Rex, 1970, a special year for Loogootee basketball. What was it like to actually play on a state championship team from a small school like Loogootee?
Well, if we had class basketball then like we do this year, I feel certain that we would have been on a state championship basketball team, and I think Jack would have had several other state championship teams. But I think often of my experiences that senior year that I had. In fact, my most vivid memory of playing basketball for Loogootee is the last 5 seconds of the 1970 semi-state game against Seymour down in Evansville. We were up, I believe it was by 2 points, when Rick Mousa, the guy that I was guarding, took a shot, and another pretty good-sized guy from Seymour named Richard Grove was going after the rebound when Mousa missed it. Jim Trout and I were both trying desperately to get that rebound, and we were all grabbing for it, and the ball just kept bouncing off our fingertips and up on the bankboard, and finally the buzzer sounded and we won the game, and it was just tremendous. It was the greatest feeling that I think I've ever had in sports, no question about it.
You know, I've always been curious, Rex. You know, you played a game, a pressure-packed game. You mentioned Seymour. I was a young kid living in Mitchell, Indiana at the time, but was actually in the stadium that night watching the game. But what do you feel pressure in a tight game like that, or is it something that you're so involved in the game you really don't think about it?
That's a good question, and now that it's been several years since that experience, I think I have a pretty good answer for you. Pressure, when you're a Loogootee Lion basketball player, is missing basketball practice. You better not miss it, and you better give 110% to Jack Butcher when you're out there practicing. When we got into that Seymour semi-state basketball game, it was a close game the whole way through. In fact, a good friend of our family, Johnny Jackson, taped that game, and he gave that tape to me, and I still listen to it once in a while. And I believe that because of the pressure that we players learned to live with, deal with, and be successful with, was what enabled us to win that game. Nothing is more pressure-packed than a career playing for Jack Butcher.
Well, you mentioned Johnny Jackson. He's a good guy and happens to be my grandfather as well. So, but
There's a lot of good guys in my memories from Loogootee. In fact, even though I shared with you my favorite memory, one of the longest lasting memories is also just the fans that Loogootee has, and especially had when I played. Guys like Paul Arvin and Adrian Arvin and Max Strawn and Dan and Farrell Armstrong, Vince Williams, Elmer Fleck, all those guys, they just come back to my mind as sitting there rooting for us every night, along with, 1,000 other people that followed us. I've been in the school business my whole career, and never have I seen support like the Loogootee fans give the Loogootee Lions.
Well, Rex, you mentioned you've been in the school business. After you graduated from Loogootee, what have you been up to?
Well, I attended Indiana Central College and majored in elementary education, and in fact was a fifth-grade teacher for a while. And then I was an elementary principal for 4 years, worked as an assistant superintendent for about 12 years, and for the past 5 years now have been superintendent of schools of the Clark Pleasant Community School Corporation in Whiteland, Indiana, which is in Johnson County, just south of Indianapolis. I'd like to put a plug in for my wife, Becky, who is also in school administration. She's principal of Charlestown Middle School, and our daughter, Rachel, is a junior at Morehead State University and plays Division I volleyball. Excellent athlete.
Excellent. Now, Rex, most people in Loogootee obviously remember you and your family, but for those who may not, who are your parents here?
My mother and father still live there in Loogootee, Bruce and Donna Sager. My two sisters, Jan and Susan, are still there in town, and my brother Gary lives out of town at this time.
Okay. Listen, Rex, to finish up here, you played for Jack Butcher for 4 years. What do you remember about Coach Butcher the most?
Well, again, I'm going to relate to my career and the people that I have been working with for the past 20-some years, and wanting them to be dedicated to what they do so that they can be the best they can be. The thing that I remember about Coach Butcher is that he lived, ate, and breathed basketball. To this very day, and I'm not kidding when I say this, when I hear the phone ring, I think it's Jack Butcher on the other end wanting me to come to the gym and shoot free throws. It didn't matter what time of the year it was, he was always working to win that next game. And I really appreciate that, and I'll remember it. I guess he's my hero.
Well, Rex, that's very well said. And I'd like to just, in that vein, as a former ball player and a fan growing up, one thing that always was special to me about Loogootee was the former ball players that played here and their accomplishments. A couple people on that team that were near and dear to my heart growing up, particularly Paul Bruner, who was my cousin and kind of the guy that I kind of looked at as a ball player. But I certainly remember you playing, and Brian Canada and Tony Smith and Jim Trout. You guys were a credit to Loogootee basketball. And I think really, while Loogootee had a great tradition building up, it was that particular year that really springboarded Loogootee to some pretty phenomenal success for a small school through the 70s, 80s, and the early part of the 90s. And with class basketball coming on, I don't know what the future holds, but we really tip our hat to you former ball players, and you've greatly helped the program by coming back on the air and relating your experience with Loogootee basketball. So I want to thank you, and I want to wish you and your family a happy holiday.
Thanks a lot, Larry. I really appreciate you remembering me.
Okay, Rex. You take care of
Hello to
yourself.
all you fans there in the Loogootee area, too.
All right, Rex.
All righty.
We'll be seeing you. Bye.
Bye.